Space Pirates and Zombies 2 should really be called Button Pressing Simulator with a bit of space combat included. I've played the original Space Pirates and Zombies, or SPAZ, many times, and it's a great example of an indie game that has a fun little story, plenty of action, and enough polish to put it head over shoulders over the majority of other indie games. When the developers of SPAZ announced years ago that they were working on a sequel, I was intrigued and excited for another round of fighting pirates and zombies in space. In a somewhat surprise announcement, the SPAZ developers said earlier this week that they were releasing SPAZ 2 on Steam Early Access, but that the majority of the work was already done on the game. In the course of this video, I encourage you to keep the early access status of SPAZ 2 in mind, though also remember that this has been in development for 3.5 years, and the developers have stated on Steam that the majority of the game is finished, so there really won't be all that much that changes between now and full release. I really hope I'm wrong in this though. Space Pirates and Zombies was a top-down, two-dimensional romp where you lead a group of ragtag adventurers/pirates in a journey to save the entire galaxy from an ancient evil menace that spreads an infection that turns people into what else but zombies. If it sounds cheesy, it is, but the combination of resource management, ship customization, top-down battles, and a host of fun little quirks made the game a delight to play from start to finish. I really wish I could say the same for SPAZ 2. Unfortunately though, instead of a tight, fun game like we got in the first SPAZ, SPAZ 2 appears to be much looser and well put together with a variety of changes being implemented purely for the sake of just making changes. SPAZ 2 offers both a top-down view, which sadly has less features than SPAZ's top-down view had, and a third-person view in which you get a more direct view of combat. You control your ships through the 2D space with the usual WASD controls, and whenever you enter conflicts, you can either manually control any of the ships under your command, or you can let the game play itself as the autopilot for all of your ships, including the one you control, as the game fights your battles for you. This isn't new to SPAZ 2 from the previous game, but there's something about the third-person combat that just feels off. The state of the galaxy in SPAZ was decidedly more desperate than in SPAZ 2, which makes sense given the plot of both games. Your mothership in SPAZ stayed motionless at the center of each system you traveled to, while you took a small collection of fighter craft to the various planets in the system to fight enemies, collect resources, and trade with space stations. Now in SPAZ 2, you control your mothership, which really doesn't look or act that much different from your fighter craft, and your fighter craft themselves, instead of being customizable with different weapon configurations, come in standard loadouts that you can't modify. You can modify the weapons directly on your mothership, but the modification process, while it might have looked good on paper, just feels clunky, awkward, and unsatisfying. Only being able to customize a single ship in your fleet is also disappointing and make battles feel mundane. In SPAZ, battles were epic sequences that took place across a large system map, often involving space stations, and every ship you destroyed jettisoned resources that you desperately needed. In SPAZ 2, the battles feel boring and lifeless, and instead of collecting resources from each ship you destroy, you simply see a list of resources at the end that were dropped by the enemy ships, and you can press a button to gather them. Was it grindy to collect resources in SPAZ? Absolutely. But it fit very well in the SPAZ story and made every interaction you had feel meaningful instead of just being a click of the mouse. Now, speaking of mouse clicking and button pressing, that's what the game feels like it's become. And while I think this comes from a good intention to streamline aspects of the first game, I think it's been overdone to a point where the game is a button pressing simulator. You press buttons to travel around the map, you press buttons to gather resources, you press buttons to scavenge ships, you press buttons to access space stations, etc., etc., etc. In SPAZ, you pressed a button to travel to a system. Then when you wanted to gather resources at a particular location inside the system, you pressed a button to travel there, and then you had to actually fly around and collect the resources, potentially facing hostile forces along the way. Trading an outpost was a risky move, since once you clicked into the area that held the space station, you had to fly to the station directly, and many times the station would be under siege, forcing you to get in and out as quickly as possible or risk dying in the crossfire. Now, space travel has changed as well, and while I wasn't too happy with the change at first, it started growing on me, and now I don't really mind it at all. Instead of jumping from system to system, you now direct your mothership on a large map from faction-controlled area to faction-controlled area directly, and there are a lot of other ships that are flying around and doing the exact same things that you do. This movement happens in real time, and you can see on this map what all the other ships' captains are doing in real time along with you. Resource locations are scavenged automatically by the AI ships as soon as those locations have enough resources available at them to make them worthwhile, and depending on your actions in various faction-controlled areas, you can end up in fights with other captains for a variety of reasons, including pissing off the owner of the area who puts a bounty on your head, and you end up having to run from all the other ships as you desperately collect up enough resources to pay to get the bounty removed. There's still a lot of button pressing involved, but this more tactical approach to the game is a unique twist from how the first game worked, and it will appeal to players who favor a more strategic game rather than one that's more hands-on, direct, and grindy. I think the reason why SPAZ 2 is so disappointing to me right now is because of the expectations that the first game created. I'm honestly still not sure whether I like or dislike SPAZ 2, but one thing I can definitively say is that I I dislike the amount of streamlining that's been introduced while simultaneously dulling down the battles, which were one of the best parts of the first game. SPAZ 2 feels like I'm playing a simulation of a game, which isn't all that fun. I'm still going to continue playing it and hope that as I progress further into the game, things change for the better, or my opinion of the game transforms into something more positive. I'm still early on in the game, and the game is still in early access, but unless the entire game changes at some point along the line and becomes more of an actual game and less of a button-pressing simulator, I suspect I'll be going back to SPAZ to get my space pirate and zombie fix. I really, really, really hope I'm wrong about the game and that it changes for the better, but at this point, I'm not holding out too much hope. I'm Mike, and this is Game Night with Mike. If you enjoyed this review, please consider subscribing. Thanks, and I'll be back again soon.